Hey everybody, I'm Zael Mednick and welcome to another episode of Preconceived. For years, conversations around sex have been evolving, and in many ways that's a really good thing. We've become more open, more thoughtful, and more attuned to women's experiences, needs, and perspectives. On this podcast, I've done several episodes over the years exploring sexuality through the female lens, but there's another side to this conversation that doesn't get as much attention publicly. What about men? What are they worried about but not saying out loud? Today, we are unpacking that. I'm joined by sex therapist and author Dr. Chris Donaghue. What are some of the other main sexual kind of fears or concerns that men come into you with? Because, again, not to find out what the answer is in terms of what normal is, but I think that could help many men feel comforted that, oh, this is something that I'm not alone in being concerned about in the dating world.
Yeah, the answers won't shock. They're pretty general, and I think just the kinds of things that a lot of us are anxious and worried about. Cheating comes up a lot, and that comes up in kind of both genders, and maybe that surprises some people that men do worry about being cheated on by their partner. That's something, and there's a lot of anxiety around how one feels about their partner, A, being friends potentially with an ex still, B, having friends of the opposite gender, and C, how they're relating to the opposite gender when out in the world. And that becomes a site of a lot of conflict in my office. Or just that generalized idea of when my girl's out doing girls' night, or when my husband or boyfriend's out doing boys' night with his friends, can I trust him? Going through each other's phones, looking at who they're following. And a lot of that is very social media driven. I don't know if people remember this, but prior to social media, prior to cell phones, the anxiety was a lot lower because your partner was just sitting next to you watching television. They weren't scrolling, having access to literally anyone and everything while sitting next to you.
That's I'm trying to think back. I mean, my stress it wasn't with social media. It was just looking at my Motorola Samsung cell phone, seeing if I'm thinking if this girl at university is going to write me back or not, or plans for the night. But yeah, I'm curious in couples therapy when you're seeing a couple. I mentioned this before about communication, and that's kind of one of those buzzwords that we do talk about. Communication is important. But how much do couples truly communicate about sex in terms of really chatting about this is what I like versus couples kind of just getting into a routine and doing either the status quo?
The deeper we get into a relationship, you would hope and you might expect that people start to maybe divulge more. It typically goes the opposite way. We stop divulging as much and we stop sharing as much. And so the beginning of your relationship is a very, very important time because that is when we start to set norms and standards around how vulnerable and intimate we are going to truly be as a couple. And it's only going to lessen. So I always say on the front end, start to normalize healthy habits, and one of them being sharing intimately. And that isn't typically the case because in the beginning of a relationship, we believe that our goal is to get them and to keep them. Early dating, I say the same thing to people. They'll say, what should I wear on my first date? Where should I take her on my first date? What should we talk about on the first date? And I'm like, oh my God, that is the wrong question. Date to be known, not to be liked. You are going about it the wrong way. Don't do what you think you need to do to get them. Go as yourself. Wear what you wear. Go to the kind of places you like to go so that you can honestly see if we are a match and compatible. Be willing to disappoint, frustrate, and realize we're not a match because we hopefully both showed up in early dating with our true selves. Don't say I love sushi and horror movies if you hate both. Say to them on the first date, that's really interesting to hear. I'm not a fan of either, and see how they manage differences. Be very open on the front end about sexuality to normalize having those kinds of hard conversations. Because here's what most people wind up doing. We call it leftover sex. We'll take off the table and we'll talk about all the things that I'm uncomfortable with and don't want to talk about. And we'll take off the table sexual things you're uncomfortable with, and we'll just do whatever's left over. And that is very boring.
So you're saying to people who are dating, be a little bit more expressive and communicative earlier on before you face that challenge, which might surprise some people who say earlier on you kind of want to be a little bit safer in terms of how you approach this sensitive topic and kind of go along with the status quo, which is what I'm guessing a lot of people's approach they think would be.
Yeah. So without getting overly academic, we call the first stage of dating symbiosis. And what that means is it's from this corny movie called The Notebook. I don't even know how
I've seen
real
The
it is.
Notebook. It's
If
okay.
you're
It's all right.
okay,
It's a good movie.
if it's the whole like if you're a bird, I'm a bird, right? Oh, you like horror movies? I love horror movies. It's a symbiosis, right? We're a little more flexible than we actually are, right? You might not like love baseball, but you don't really hate it, so you're willing to go. We overly accommodate, right? And the problem is that we inevitably hit the second stage, which is a very important stage to get to, called differentiation, where you actually start to realize we're not the same person and differences do emerge. And that's the stage where some people erroneously say we're not compatible and they break up. And that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're actually not bullshitting anymore. And two authentic people are emerging where they're like, I don't like that. And you're starting to see differences, and the differences aren't cute anymore. The most important predictor of long term, happy, sustainable relationship is how a couple manages conflict. Not how similar they are, not how different they are, but how they manage conflict, the way they manage it, and if they're able to repair. When things are going well, it's easy. When things are going hard, we really show who we are.
You said be yourself, don't come in with kind of preset questions on a date, and that all sounds good, and I agree with that. I wonder when I was dating, what was my purpose of dating, and did I know? And it probably changed, it shifted when I was dating. Was I dating because I was truly trying to find connection? Uh, was I dating it sometimes to seek validation? And sometimes validation meant a sexual encounter at the end of the date, or after a couple of dates. But I guess I realized as I was reflecting that I think a lot of people, when they are trying to establish a relationship or trying to establish commonality in order to make something work, they're doing it in order to get some validation that, okay, yes, I'm a likable and desirable person.
I also think that placing our self worth in our partner choice is a very flawed thing to do because we're not going to get mirrored back necessarily that which we want to get mirrored back. And we're not necessarily always going to get that validation. And so I think that's okay to be a piece of it. But I do think it's a really important question you almost pose is that I want people to ask themselves, why am I dating? And am I dating for reasons that are going to be good for my mental health? I mean, not shocking as a therapist, that mental health framework is very important to me, where I want people to use that as a question for everything, right? Like, how would that job impact my mental health? How would buying this whatever impact my mental health? How would following what I follow on social media impact my mental health? And really taking that seriously.
Do you think that women have a similar lack of knowledge about what men are thinking, and that many men, when they're having sex for the first several interactions with a woman, or many could be years, are actually very concerned about the things we talked about, like how long am I going to last for?
Yeah.
And that's kind of top of mind, even over the pleasure component of it.
If you have no sense, if you can't answer confidently what your partner enjoys sexually, if you can't confidently answer what parts of their body they most enjoy getting engaged or pleasured, you need to go home and have a conversation. Do not assume. Because I know someone's a horrible sex partner when they say things like, I know what all women like. I know what all men like. No, you don't. They are all very different. Every time you have a new partner, you're a virgin again, and so are they. You do not know how their body works, what they enjoy. And that's why we do things like the body mapping. Sexual desire is really born out of newness and novelty. And it's just the smallest tweaks. If you always do the 1, 2, 3, 4, we kiss and then I touch her boobs and then I go down on her vagina and then I penetrate her, boring. Start with step 3 and with step 2. Start with step 4 and with step 1. Mix it up, little tweaks, different times of day, different places, small tweaks. Keep it new and novel, because familiarity is the death of eroticism.
That's a great quote. Did you just come up with that now?
Sure did on the fly. But conceptually, I use that concept a lot because I think it hits for people.
It does. No, it's very good. Familiarity is the death of eroticism. You've written a lot and spoken about the kind of the concept of the best sex of your life and being the best sexual partner. Unpack that a little more for me. We've talked a lot about kind of what the problem is and diagnosed that, but give me a little more about some of the actual tips you have for people like you just gave about
Yeah.
mixing it up, about what could lead to the best sex of your life and make you a better sexual partner.
So the stance I take with people that are sexually anxious or they're new to sexuality is that other point first, which is don't assume you know what all girls want or what all guys want. Approach each partner saying, I have to find out. Number two, when you're moving towards your sex partner, instead of thinking, what do I think they want me to do? Look at them and say, what would turn me on to do to them? Because even a girl going down on a guy can be for her. And I want the guy to benefit from the desire coming from her to him, which then comes back to her. We call it erotic reciprocity. Erotic empathy can become a cyclical thing that can be added. So when you're approaching your female partner and she's sitting there naked, laying there naked, sitting there clothed, think, what would turn me on to do to her? And go with that. Better sex is bringing more of the body in, stepping out of patterns and habits, talking, vocalize. It's also a sign of comfort. Start to talk. Put words out there. Everyone just wants to be normal. No one wants to be weird. A lot of our worth is reflected back to us based on the norms of those around us. So again, it's diagnostic to me. If you're in a relationship where you do like some weird things and it isn't safe to share that, you might have a deeper problem. You might be with a very unsafe partner.
If you had one piece of advice to kind of the single male who's dating and experiencing sex, and then the male who's in a long-term relationship, something that's easy, kind of immediate that they could do to change their sex life.
To the person in the longer term relationship, most likely you're falling into patterns and habits. Make the smallest changes as a way to preserve sex being a place of fun and connection, but keep it new and novel. So that's my advice for a longer term. Keep it new and novel. Avoid patterns and habits. Really practice bringing your authenticity. Do your best on avoiding the trap of performing normal, because you never actually know what your partner's interested in. Try to work on just normalizing, dealing with the anxiety of bringing more authenticity from the jump.